Isack Hadjar is the latest driver to step into the second seat at Red Bull Racing, and if the 2026 Miami Grand Prix is anything to go by, he might be the latest victim of the infamous Red Bull second seat curse. When Hadjar was promoted to the main team alongside Max Verstappen, there was a lot of hope. He had a strong rookie season with Racing Bulls in 2025, proving he had the raw pace and racecraft to deserve a shot at the top. And he started 2026 looking like he could handle the immense pressure that comes with wearing the senior team's colours. But as Red Bull brought major upgrades to the car in Miami, a familiar and worrying pattern began to emerge. It's a pattern we've seen time and time again, and it raises serious questions about whether anyone can truly succeed in that second seat. Let's look at how Hadjar's season started, because the context is important. In the opening round in Australia, he impressed everyone by qualifying third, showing that he had the raw speed to mix it at the front of the grid right out of the gate. Even though that race ended in a retirement due to a mechanical failure, he had made his mark. He followed it up with a solid 8th place finish in China and a 12th place finish in Japan. While not spectacular, he was staying in the same ballpark as Verstappen, keeping the gap respectable. In those early races, the car was perhaps a bit more neutral, a bit more forgiving. And that is all Red Bull really asks of their second driver: be close enough to pick up the pieces and support the team's strategic options. But then came Miami, and everything changed. Red Bull brought a significant upgrade package to Florida, aiming to close the gap to their rivals and give Verstappen the tools he needed to fight for wins again. And while Verstappen used those upgrades to qualify on the front row and fight at the sharp end of the grid, Hadjar suddenly found himself struggling to keep the car on the track. The performance gap between the two drivers, which had been manageable in the first 3 races, suddenly exploded. In sprint qualifying, Verstappen was almost a full second faster than Hadjar. In the world of Formula 1, a full second between teammates in the same machinery is an eternity. In the main qualifying session, the gap was still massive, with Verstappen taking second and Hadjar managing only 9th. It was a stark contrast that highlighted just how much Hadjar was struggling to adapt to the new characteristics of the car. And then, things went from bad to worse. After qualifying, the FIA found that the floor of Hadjar's car was protruding outside the allowed reference volume limits. It was a clear technical infringement, and the penalty was harsh but inevitable: disqualification from qualifying. Red Bull team principal Laurent Mekies admitted it was a mistake by the team, a rare operational error from a squad usually known for its precision. But the damage was done. Hadjar, who was already struggling for confidence and pace, was sent to the back of the grid for the race. Starting from the back on a street circuit like Miami, in a car you don't feel comfortable in, is a monumental challenge. Starting from the back is tough enough, but Hadjar's race ended almost before it began. On lap 5, while trying to make up ground and perhaps pushing a little too hard to prove a point, he clipped the wall at turn 14. The impact broke his front suspension and sent him crashing out of the race. It was a messy end to a miserable weekend. After the crash, Hadjar was furious with himself, thumping his steering wheel in frustration. He admitted he was too eager, too excited to make moves, and that he ruined his own race by not being cautious enough. He openly stated that it was the first time he had really struggled with his overall pace in Formula 1, and that he needed to dig deep to avoid another weekend like it. It was a brutally honest assessment from a young driver who suddenly found himself out of his depth. But this isn't just about one bad weekend in Miami. If it were just one bad race, it could be written off as a blip. But this is a pattern that has haunted Red Bull for years. Since Daniel Ricciardo left the team at the end of 2018, Red Bull has struggled to find a driver who can consistently perform alongside Max Verstappen. Pierre Gasly was promoted with high hopes and then quickly demoted after half a season of struggling to match Verstappen's pace. Alex Albon suffered the exact same fate, looking lost in a car that seemed to have a mind of its own. Sergio Perez managed to hold onto the seat for a few years and even won some races, but he too struggled massively whenever the car was pushed to a higher level of performance. And last year, both Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda found it incredibly difficult to tame the Red Bull machine, leading to more instability in that second seat. It's a graveyard for talented drivers. So, why does this keep happening? Why do talented, proven drivers suddenly look lost when they get into the second Red Bull seat? A big part of the answer lies in the car itself and what it demands from the driver. Red Bull builds cars that are incredibly fast, but they are also notoriously difficult to drive. They tend to have a very sharp, pointy front end and a loose, nervous rear end. Red Bull simply pushes the car to be as fast as possible. But what makes Verstappen so special is that he can adapt to whatever the car demands. He has the unique ability to control a car that is constantly on the edge of oversteer, extracting maximum performance from a setup that most other drivers find completely undrivable. The problem is not that the car is built for him. The problem is that he is one of the very few drivers on the grid who can actually handle a car at this level of performance. When Red Bull brings upgrades, like they did in Miami, those upgrades are designed to raise the absolute ceiling of the car's performance. The car simply gets faster, but as the car gets faster, it also gets harder to drive. The operating window becomes incredibly narrow, and if you don't have the specific skill set to handle a car at that level, you fall out of that window and lose huge amounts of lap time. Verstappen thrives in this environment because he can adapt to the car in a way that almost no other driver on the grid can. For the second driver, it is an absolute nightmare. As the car pushes further towards its performance limits, the gap to Verstappen grows. We saw this exact scenario play out with Gasly, we saw it with Albon, we saw it with Perez, and now it looks like we might be seeing it with Hadjar. The upgrades arrive, Verstappen finds more pace, and the second driver falls off a cliff. Hadjar went from being within a couple of tenths of Verstappen at the start of the season to being nearly a second off the pace after the upgrades arrived in Miami. When the car is relatively stable, a good driver can stay close to Verstappen. But when it is pushed to its extreme limits, only Verstappen seems able to handle it. The second driver is left fighting the car just to keep it on the track, let alone push for lap time. It's a vicious cycle that destroys confidence. Red Bull, for their part, has tried to downplay Hadjar's struggles in Miami. Team principal Laurent Mekies pointed out that Hadjar suffered from a straight-line power deficit for most of the weekend, which obviously didn't help his pace and made it harder to judge his true performance. Mekies also noted that the team didn't help Hadjar by making the technical error that got him disqualified, putting him on the back foot before the race even started. The team is publicly backing him, saying they are not worried and that they expect him to be back up to speed at the next race in Montreal. They are trying to shield their young driver from the intense scrutiny that always surrounds that second seat. And to be fair to Hadjar, he has shown remarkable resilience before. Last year, before his debut in Australia, he crashed on the formation lap and was left in tears, a devastating moment for any rookie. But he bounced back from that embarrassing mistake to have a superb rookie season, proving he has the mental strength to recover from major setbacks. Former world champion Jenson Button even backed him, noting how well he recovered last year and suggesting he can do it again. But the challenge he faces now is fundamentally different. He isn't just fighting his own mistakes or a lack of experience, he is fighting a car that demands an extraordinary level of skill to extract the most from it. A skill level that, so far, only one driver on the grid has consistently shown. The pressure on the second Red Bull seat is immense. You are constantly compared to a generational talent in Max Verstappen, and you are driving a car that demands a very specific skill set that very few drivers in the world actually have. Every mistake is magnified, every tenth of a second lost is scrutinized. If Hadjar can't find a way to adapt to the upgraded car, the whispers about the Red Bull curse will only get louder. Miami was a disaster for Isack Hadjar, but the real test will be how he responds in the coming races. Can he break the curse, or will he become just another name on the long list of talented drivers who couldn't survive as Max Verstappen's teammate? The clock is already ticking.